This is a video on a fairly straightforward foundational approach to story and storytelling. So this connects to the aesthetic aspect of writing and how we build story, make things interesting, make them fun. So this is a quick video. It's bare bones foundational, and so I just want to make sure that I have this represented. I did part of the fun of this is not just my kind of literature background in my master's or bachelor's, but also like in high school, I was president of the Storytellers Club for 3 years, and we would either use existing kids' stories or we'd write our own, and we'd present them multiple times in a semester or a trimester. Once a trimester, I think, is actually what it was in high school, to elementary school students who would come and visit for a couple hours. They would come to the high school library, 2 or 3 classes at a time, and 4 or 5 of us in the Storytellers Club would present, and we would do workshops and all that fun stuff. Anyways, I'll say it's fun. Let's talk about this though. So traditional storytelling has this kind of this basic story arc. We've got the opening action or opening scene or beginning, and then we lead through rising action, climax, and then denouement or closing or resolution. And there are more complex versions of this, like the hero's journey, but let's just start here. Aristotle said every good piece of writing or story has a basic beginning, middle, and end, the clear beginning, middle, and end, which seems overly simplistic, but it is important to make note that there should be some beginning and some ending. And even though this is kind of story is usually considered more in the creative writing or literature side of things, so it's really more aesthetically oriented, it is just as much a rhetorical principle, because creative writers are very intentional about what scenes to present to their writers. So it is a meaningful thing, and it does have rhetorical principles applied as well. What's my purpose, and what am I trying to do? What's the promise I've given in the beginning to the reader, and how do I give them scenes along the way that help them see the development of this character or this society or whatever my focus of my story is. So beginning, middle, end. We usually have some sort of opening scene, and a lot of there's kind of this. Wouldn't call it an unspoken rule, but there's an understanding about good writing that good books and novels that those who are in the publishing business will say, like, they can tell within the first 2 pages whether this book is going to be good. And it's not just because the grammar's clean or it's got vivid language. It's that there's something, there's a promise in the first couple pages of the book that tells me there's going to be something interesting and worthwhile to look forward to. And so good writers start their story with some sort of promise, an expectation, even if it's implicit or implied strongly, or something in the way the book is presented, that in that beginning we get a sense of what a character's longing for, or what the problem is, that kind of a problem establishment, or even in the everyday context, what's the tension, right? And so then we go through and we might see a series of crises or tension points, or, to quote VeggieTales' Little Drummer Boy, story bumps, right? And so with that, we want to be thinking through what are the story bumps for our story, and how do they build toward that ultimate, like, climax point. And so sometimes it's, a scene may, for example, a story may start with revealing character, and I can talk about more about this in a character video, development video, but an opening scene may start with a little boy who's gone and stolen an apple, but the way he responds to the person who's when he's caught, maybe he doesn't respond with the "it wasn't me" or "you're lying" or anything like that. Maybe the boy's contrite. Maybe he recognizes he did something wrong, and that's a way for the way he responds in that small situation, that mini crisis at the beginning, tells the reader a little bit about that character. So part of this opening scene or introduction, we want to establish in small context, because we want to have room to build. We want to establish kind of what are the stakes, or who are the people, or what is it unique about the character and the way they respond to tension points, or do they fail in a small scenario, but that gives them a chance to think through and develop over time. So basic storytelling says start with an opening scene, set the scene, right, and do it in an interesting way with some sort of tension, with some sort of problem or promise that the reader is given, and then work through a series of circumstances that allow character to be revealed, revealed, setting to be revealed, and progress to be made towards some sort of goal. And ultimately the climax is they achieved the goal or they didn't, but something happened along the way that allowed that to be a meaningful journey to that point. And then we have the denouement, or closing action, basically. So this is and so these are the key plot points of a traditional classic story arc, with a beginning, middle, end. Even if you do something fancy like in medias res, where you start in the middle of the action as your opening scene, you're still you're just rearranging the crises, and you're still starting with an opening scene and then slowly revealing the story, and still building experiences and helping us understand over time. So we want to think about those story bumps, those tension points, those mini crises that lead to this ultimate climax point, and then make sure all the loose ends are tied up, or as many as you want for this novel, because who knows, maybe it's a series, or for this story, because who knows, maybe there's the classic reading rainbow, but don't take my word for it at the end. I don't know, or dun dun dun, some sort of cliffhanger, right? But this is the basic story. There's a clear opening. There is a series of circumstances that get more and more intense as you go, and then there is ultimately a climactic moment or event that either the promise is resolved, the problem is solved in some way, shape, or form, or it's not, and the reader can clearly tell why. Like sometimes the failure is part of that meaningful moment, and so that promise in the beginning, as long as the reader can track with the writer on why that might have changed or the goal might have shifted, even if it's like think about the movie Cars and Lightning McQueen, right? We find out early on that he wants to be the best racer ever, right? And he doesn't care how he does it. And then he goes through this process of transformation, and in the final lap, of the final race at the end of the movie, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the first Cars movie yet, he ends up choosing to not win and go with character and make sure the other racer crosses the finish line. It's his last race. It's this big moment, right? And character building, it's not just about winning. And then the other guy who had that mentality too, who was in the beginning his competition, is now looks like a terrible guy, because he's like, where's my celebration? And he didn't look around to take care of the other racers when one of the main guys crashed. So if you don't connect that reference, find the one that works for you. But this the other thing I'll say is storytelling is also something, as a little nugget, it's something that goes beyond just like novels and short stories and creative fiction. Storytelling is something we do on a daily basis. It works when we're presenting research, so it can have a scientific tie. It's something when we meet new people, we're going on job interviews, being able to tell stories in an interesting way, the story of my work experience, or being able, if we're on a first date or getting to know a new friend or introducing ourselves, what's the interesting story? Have we thought rhetorically about what parts of my life I want to emphasize? Following the structure can help. We don't just want to kind of drone on and on and on about ourselves, like I was born here and then I went here and then nothing really interesting, or we can choose where the start and the finish of our story is. So we can choose to say something meaningful to the context or meaningful to the other person across the table from us as we're talking. And rhetorically, we choose where to start, where to finish, and what scenes to include, even if it's a nonfiction text about our own lives and we're writing, or if we're writing an autobiography, or more likely, more targeted, a memoir or something like that. So there's broader applications than just a traditional like novel or short story or creative aesthetic approach. So keep that in mind, have fun. Hopefully this was helpful and meaningful for you.